What is going on, guys? It is DMG here, and today we are going to be taking a look at a formation that will be very easy to break down constant press. Now, in my opinion, constant press is absolutely ridiculous because I think it's absurd that you can press one or two buttons and then your team is able to press better than Prime, Pep Guardiola, and Klopp combined. And along with that, the attacking AI is just not nearly as good as it should be. So, you combine all these things and you have an incredibly too easy and simple mechanic, right? And so, it's kind of ridiculous in my opinion. That being said, we still have to deal with it and we still have to find formations and ways to kind of counteract it. So in my opinion, I do think that this formation, just like it was in FIFA 21, is going to be a great way to counteract the constant press. Now, the formation in question is the 4-3-3 version 2. It's actually very similar to just the 4-1-4-1, but instead of left and right mids, you actually have left and right wingers. So essentially those outside mids just push up a little bit further. That's the only real difference here. However, that one really small change is actually a huge part of it as to why this is a great formation to beat the constant press. Now, I will go over the tactics and instructions as well. However, if you just want to see, what to look for when you're trying to beat the constant press, you can skip forward a little bit. I would recommend viewing the tactics and instructions. That way you can set your team up properly. But again, if you want to skip forward, I'll probably put a time somewhere around this general area, and you can just skip to that to just check out that little part of the video. So we won't go as in depth as we do with some of the other instructions and tactics videos because this is specifically just looking at how to beat the constant press. So, I do think it's a good formation. I do enjoy using the 4-3-3 version 2, but I do think that there are probably better formations out there, and that, I think that this should just be in your arsenal, something that you have kind of like in your, ultra defensive, attacking, ultra attacking, little setup. So then you just kind of have it in your back pocket in case someone does press you. So for the tactics, we have the defensive style and balance, the width at 40, depth at 60. This is pretty standard. I do think that with the width being smaller, I think is important because we do want to be as compact as possible, especially with, FIFA how it is. And I do think the depth at 60 is also pretty nice to have when you are defending with this formation, specifically because I do think then the midfielders are able to help out defensively a little bit more. For the offense, we have the build-up play on balance, the chance creation on direct passing, the width at 40, players in the box at 6, and then of course corners, free kicks. You can kind of do whatever you want there. Now, for the build-up play, being on balance is important because that's going to help us break the press a little bit more, so I do recommend balance. For the chance creation, I would recommend direct passing, just so then your players are trying to press the back line a little bit more. That's just what I prefer. For the width, we do want it at 40 just because I've noticed that left and right wingers in a 4-3-3 formation tend to be just too far wide, if that's a thing, in a wide formation. So I do think 40 width is a little bit better, so they push in just a little bit. Players in the box is at 6 just because then we get runners from the midfield, which is going to be very important, not just for scoring goals and doing well with this formation just in a normal setting, but also for breaking the press. For the instructions, we have the goalie on comes for crosses and sweeper keeper. For the defense, everything is going to be default, so we don't have stay back while attacking on any of the fullbacks. It's just going to be default and balance for everything there. The defensive mid is on stay back while attacking and cover center. He's also on man mark. Now you can have that on balance defense or cut passing lanes. I just think man mark is a personal preference of mine. And then for the center mids, one is on stay on the edge of the box for crosses and cover center, and the other is on get forward and cover center. Obviously the center mid that's more attacking is going to be on get forward, and then the more box to box style center mid is going to be just on balanced with, again, stay on the edge of the box and cover center. Now, it doesn't matter which center mid is on get forward and balanced attack. It can be the left or right one, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that those tactics line up accordingly. The wingers, like I mentioned before, are going to be on cut inside and get in behind. That get in behind aspect is going to be very important when you are breaking the press. And then the striker is going to be on stay central, false 9, and stay forward. And similar to the wingers being on get in behind, the striker on false 9 is going to be very important as well for beating the press. All right, so now we're going to move on to what to look for when you are trying to beat the press, what players you want to try to look for, which players are most likely going to be open, kind of what players are decoys, and all of those great things. So when you are coming up against the press, there are a few things that you do want to look for. One is going to be looking for the center mid who's on get forward. Again, it can be on the left or right side, it can be whoever, it doesn't obviously have to be Fakir either, but whoever's on get forward, most of the time, that's going to be the player that's breaking the defensive line and someone you can do an over-the-top through ball to in order to get an open 1v1 on goal. So one thing I notice when players are constant pressing is that besides defenders, that is, they will not track back to mark a certain run, especially, you know, again, the midfielders and the attackers. So in this case, Fakir, because he's obviously the midfielder here, he's going to be marked by most likely another midfielder. And even if it's a defensive mid, right, most of the time they won't track back past the center backs and past the defenders, and so he's going to be wide open for that. Keep in mind that when someone is using constant press, the vast majority of the time they are down a goal and it's late on in a game. So a midfielder who's, you know, on the team that needs to score a goal, they're not going to track back all the way, which makes sense, right? Because again, they need to score a goal, right? And then they're going to be sending a lot of players forward. So that midfielder isn't going to track a run that's being made from one of your midfielders. Now, most of the time, the player who is on get forward is going to be the one that is going to be open. However, if there's an instance where you drag that player back to defend or some type of weird positioning thing is going on, the other midfielder does occasionally make those runs forward. That does happen. If the player on get forward is not getting forward, the other one will take their spot and get forward. So again, most of the time, in this case, it is Fakir that is open. However, there have been a few instances where Tonali is the one making those runs in behind. That does happen occasionally. Now you may be wondering, how do, you know, these two center mids making these kind of obvious runs get past this whole slew of defenders, right? How do they get past this defensive line? Well, that is where our attackers come into play. In this case, we obviously have left and right wingers, and because they are so far forward, the opponent's left and right backs typically have to mark them. If they don't, you can just do a simple over-the-top through ball to them, and it's going to be nice, easy, and dandy, right? That's going to be something that you can just kind of look for if the opponent's left and right backs aren't marking your wingers. That means the opponent's left and right backs are going to be dragged out wide, and that leaves only two center backs, two defenders, marking and just saving the defense. And then from there, that is where your striker on false nine comes into play. He drops in deep. He essentially becomes a center attacking mid. And from there, one of two things happens. They either, one, don't drop in to mark him, which means that he's going to be open because the center backs aren't going to be marking them, or one of the center backs does drop in to mark him. And that's typically what you want to look for, because when that happens, then you're going to have your center mid who's on get forward making that late run. And occasionally, if that center back does tend to mark that run, the other center mid's going to be open as well. And so those are the two players specifically that you really want to look out for, is your left and right center mid. The left and right wingers that you have on the field, they're essentially acting as decoys, right? If they're open, that's great, but the 99% of the time, that's not going to be happening. So again, they're just out there to spread the field and make sure that the left and right backs for your opponent are not helping your opponent in any way. The striker is almost a decoy. He's essentially just dropping in, so then he drags a center back with him, but occasionally they do, he does appear open. So if he is open, you pass to him, but most of the time he will be followed by a center back. And so then your two center mids, they make those runs, especially the one on get forward. He's going to be the one that is going to be open. So I've saved this clip here kind of showing what to look for and kind of how these runs are being made. So again, most of the time your center mids are going to be open, but if they're not, there is going to be someone else. Because again, right, if you do want to break the press, you kind of have to be a little bit risky. You have to send some players forward. And so that's what you're going to be doing, right? So if your two center mids are somehow marked, there's going to be a winger that's going to be open. If your wingers and your center mids are marked, your striker, your defensive mid, your overlapping fullbacks. One of those guys are going to be open at some point. And so this is what I'm going to be showing you, how to kind of break down all of this stuff. So he does have a few players forward. I'm just trying to kind of pass out of the back, see what happens. Now, in this case, Delaney is open right here near the referee in the midfield, which is great. If he was being marked in that moment in time, you just kind of hold the ball with your goalie. If all of your players are marked on the field, that means your goalie is going to be open because the opposition goalie is obviously not going to go and mark that guy. And so your goalie can just hold it for as long as you want. And then when someone turns to go and press you, that leaves someone open. So make sure you have some composure. You try to play it simple, but again, start it with the goalie. Just wait until someone presses you, and then whoever does press you, look to see who's going to be open. So as you can see in the mini map, because we have Eto'o dropping into the midfield, that means that one of his midfielders is going to mark Eto'o, which means that Delaney is going to be open. So that's what we do. We pass the ball with Minen into Delaney, and then he goes to mark us now because Delaney has the ball. Now we have a bunch of other players open. Essentially, Eto'o coming in and playing for the midfield, that's just going to create a lot more overload, so then we can pass it between some players. Because the vast majority of players are using, like a 4-2-2 or a 4-2-3-1, meaning there's only 2 players in the midfield for them, having 3 midfielders with a 4-3-3, you are always going to have some type of numerical advantage in the midfield, and that's what you really want to look out for as well. Not only that, we're obviously adding Eto'o to the mix. We're adding our striker, meaning we're essentially having 4 midfielders. So pretty much no matter what, you should be overrunning their midfield constantly. That means there's always going to be someone open because the defense and the opposition is going to have to pick and choose who they're going to go mark. And so in this case, he goes to mark Delaney. We have another one. I think it's Conte marking Eto'o. Guess what? Fekir is now open. All right, so we pass the ball to Fekir. We kind of bring the ball up a little bit. That's good. And now we have Tonali, one of our other midfielders, making runs. You're essentially going to have like this kind of wall of 3 kind of running up the field with your striker and your 2 center mids. All of them are almost always going to be kind of running up the field together. And also look at the opponent's left and right backs. They're taken out of the play because of our left and right wingers. The opponent center back dropped in, and now we're going to be having 2 or 3 players, Eto'o, Tonali, Fekir, running at the defense with only 1 center back for the opposition. So from here, again, we get the ball to Tonali. Now, all of his players are running back. Okay, fair enough. All of his players managed to run back. That's fair. Guess what? Like I said, not every single player for your opponent is going to be tracking back. We have Cuadrado making a run forward. He is wide open here. That is fantastic for us, right? We get the ball to Cuadrado. Guess what? Now we have Chiesa that's wide open. In this case, he's still open as well. So there are times where the decoys get open because if somehow they are able to run back and mark your striker, your 2 center mids, that wall of 3 running forward, there's always someone that is going to be open. Now from here, we pass the ball forward to Chiesa. That's great. His center back doesn't mark that late run from Tonali, and unfortunately, it goes out just for a corner. But nevertheless, if you were to have someone with better shooting than Tonali, maybe someone like Fofana or another great box-to-box center mid, that could easily be a goal. And so just like that, just using these overloads, just looking for these players that drop in, using decoys for some of our other players, we were able to break his press fairly easily and also get a corner and a decent shot out of it as well. Now, like I said before, I do not think that this is the best formation in the game just in terms of kind of general play. There are probably better ones. If you like the 4-2-3-1, that could work. I know a lot of people have really liked the 4-1-4-1 as well. So, there probably are some better formations just in general, but in terms of breaking the press, I do not think you're going to find a better one than this. So that is going to be it for this video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Now, if you do have any questions, just let me know in the comments and, I'll try to get those answered for you guys. But like I said, that is going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been DMG. Peace.